for coming to the Fab today for our launch of the new Inspiring Peacemakers series. It's really good to be back this semester, and I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces, which is really important to the Peacebuilding Initiative. So this event today will be titled, How and Where Do We Start Our Journey as Young Peace Builders in Such a Violent World Today? This event will be the first event in a long line of events that are the pinnacle of our mission and vision here at the Peacebuilding Initiative. Thanks to the FAB, the Nagalandran Philanthropic Alliance, CCDP, the Peacebuilding Initiative has manifested our vision into reality. And thank you so much for the Director of Studies, Mahi Losal, for always supporting PBI in all of our endeavors. Before I go on, I would like to formally welcome our guest of honor to say a few words about the significance of an event series such as this one in such turbulent times. Please welcome Ambassador Tormund C. Andersen, the new permanent representative of the Republic of Norway to the UN in Geneva.
I'm not that new any longer because I've been around for a year already, but great to see all of you. John and Dorothy, thank you very much. And not least, thank you to every one of you for being interested and engaged in peace mediation work. Because to give you the bad news first, of course, we're looking at a very difficult situation in terms of armed conflict, in terms of the space you might conceive for efforts like this. We have a big intrastate war going on in Europe, the biggest since the Second World War. We have a devastating conflict in Gaza, which with an imminent risk of regional escalation. We have terrible conflict in Sudan that takes a lot of civilian lives. All of this you know already, but I'm just mentioning a few of these conflicts, and there's many more. And we saw in 2023 a dramatic rise in the civilian death toll in armed conflict, 70% up. So the picture is really, really bleak in terms of armed conflicts, and also I would say in terms of the erosion of the norms that we here in Geneva hold dear, the IHL, the human rights law, etc. There is this feeling of lawlessness, I think, in many theaters of conflict, and a feeling, I think, with many warring parties that, you know, if my enemy does not abide by the rules, why should I abide by the rules? And this creates a really vicious downward spiral that is also, it is a problem for civilian populations, but it's also a problem in a way for mediation, because some of the parameters that we use to, you know, frame our negotiations within international law is so much in peril. So the easy thing to say is, of course, that in this situation it's a moral and political imperative to try and mediate and solve and prevent conflict. And as Norway, we have not given up on this. I mean, there's a humanitarian aspect to this. We need to mediate and we need to prevent conflict to alleviate humanitarian suffering. But it is also, of course, for any nation, not least a small and open nation like mine, a self-interest in preventing conflict, because in today's interconnected world, conflict in one place easily translates into security risks in a different place. So there's a huge need for what we're talking about. But how should we sort of maintain that conviction that, you know, there is a space, there is a need, there is possibilities for peace mediation efforts? That's the big question. And I want to say very clearly that, you know, my country has not given up, and neither should you. There are spaces for mediation efforts. We are, as Norway, involved in various ways in around 20 different conflicts, and there are good things happening, you know, absent maybe the big breakthroughs and the sort of headlines, but there are important progress being made. We saw a ceasefire being agreed in Colombia last year that is still lasting. You see the communists and the government and the Philippines making progress towards a peaceful settlement. And we see other things like that. And then there are things that are in the public eye, and there's of course also a lot of things that go below the radar, and that I think is important to appreciate, because even in the absence, like I said, of this big breakthrough, the sort of the completed peace negotiation, and where people live happily ever after, there's so many components in negotiations, and sometimes just to maintain a tissue, a sort of fabric of contact and so on, can be something that is quite useful and that prevent escalation and so on. There were many things to take from Professor Venman's lecture today, and one metaphor that stuck with me is this mountain hike, right? This big mountain chain that was on the screen, and how a peace process is, of course, to climb one mountain and then maybe fall down, and then when you reach the top, you see a lot of other mountains in front of you. So I want to make a case for the partial successes and the many small steps forward that make for a better world, and make for less deadly and less escalating conflicts when they go on. One of the things that we do as Norway is that, of course, we are not a big power negotiator. We cannot pick up the phone to anyone and say, "Oh, this is the way it's going to be." So we are there when people need a disinterested facilitator, someone that can bring people together, someone that can insert the competence that we have built up over the last few decades around this, and where we can maybe be a little bit like diplomats that sort of bring different capacities to the table and create that situation where factors align in a way that you can make progress. We are long term. We don't give up easily. We don't go away. We know that these things go in phases, and it happens that parties that we have been engaging with come back years later and say, "Can we start again? Can we reactivate?" So we make sure to maintain contacts, and we make sure to talk to almost everyone, I would say. That is not a trademark of our peace and mediation efforts. We don't believe that isolation is any good, and we don't believe that dialogue necessarily confers legitimacy. So we reserve our right to talk to, let's say, the Taliban, because they are de facto power holders in Afghanistan. That does not imply that we subscribe to Taliban's policies, but I think that's important to have that ability to talk to people on the ground. I want to say just a few words about the importance of international law and norms and standards. I was touching upon this in my beginning. It is a big problem that international law is being eroded in the way that we see. Gaza, Sudan, there are many other examples. Ukraine, of course, where the UN Charter, the basic premise of the UN Charter that you cannot use military force against another state is, of course, being blatantly disregarded by Russia in that conflict, and all of this makes it difficult. So that is maybe sort of the headline of my mandate here in Geneva, is to try and see where I can contribute to reinforcing norms and standards that are very important, and that I think is a sort of foundation also for mediation efforts. I wanted to end by being a bit inspirational to you young, talented people that are in this room and that might think that peace and mediation work is something that I want to do with my talent and with my career, with my time. I think it is something super worthwhile doing. I think it is very, very interesting work. It is a small sector. I took away from you, Achim, that the investment in mediation efforts is 0.01% of military spending globally, which I think cannot lead to any other conclusion that we need to invest more in this sector, and it will grow, I think. It is also certainly not a state monopoly. On the contrary, there's a big ecosystem of non-state actors, very niche and talented and well-resourced NGOs that you can work with and for. And there are entry points and spaces for quiet diplomacy that can be quite effective, still to be found in this space. It has also become, among states, a little bit of a growth industry. When we started out 25 years ago, not many countries took on these kind of roles. But now a lot of more states are, and that is, I think, fantastic. There's more enough to go around for everyone in terms of conflicts. And you know, the diversity of actors also make for, like in most other cases, more effective outcomes. So it might be sometimes a bit confusing to see how many actors are involved in different processes, but in general, of course, different perspectives, different entry points, different cultural backgrounds, proximities, makes for a bigger toolbox. So we are happy to work with cross-regional alliances and to work with certainly NGOs and international organizations and different compositions of states in order to make things happen. So I really want to make a pitch at the end for working in this sector. I think it is super important. I think it would be very inspiring to hear from you know, to youngish people that are doing this, and I'm looking forward to hear from you, and I will stay here and look forward to engage with you all afterwards. So thank you for coming, and thank you for a good choice of career.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tormod, for those inspirational words, and also for a little bit on what Norway does in the peace mediation sector, and also to make sure that all the youth in this room know that peace building is a growing sector and they should be able to continue to break in. So thank you so much for that, and we're very, very happy to have you here and to have your support. From the CCDP, the Center on Conflict, Development and Peace, we also have a few welcoming remarks from Eliza Irwin, who has her baby in tow, and she's very, 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 you know, welcome to be here. So thank you so much, Eliza. You have the floor.
Thank you. The littlest peace builder right here. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you guys. I mean, really thanks to the Peacebuilding Initiative for allowing us to co-host this with you. So I just wanted to let anybody in the audience who didn't know there's almost 10 research centers that are based at the Graduate Institute in a village. I get lost between petals. I think it's that one. Right next door behind the Fab that host research projects on cross-cutting themes. They're interdisciplinary. They welcome projects from any of the faculties at the Institute. We are the Center on Conflict Development and Peace Building, which does what it says on the tin. We host research projects and other projects that deal with issues related to conflict development and peace building and their intersection. And so I wanted to let all of you know that any initiative that engages with those themes, we really welcome you to swing on by to the CCDP anytime to talk to us about your research, your projects, or initiatives that you would like to get launched, like this incredible one, which we're so proud to be a part of. I think that the ambassador did a fantastic job, as Ahmed did this afternoon, of highlighting the challenges and as well as the opportunities and the promise of the landscape, and my daughter agrees. And so I will just say, I think today's topic in particular is very salient to us, because I think youth especially bring fresh perspectives to peace building that are so important. We're just thrilled to be a part of it, so thank you very much, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you guys. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eliza and Penelope, for those wonderful words. And the Peacebuilding Initiative wholeheartedly agrees with them. With that, the youth are very, very integral to this sector, and we are the future of it. And so I am here to talk to two inspiring peacemakers who started their journey as peacemakers very young as well. And so I will give them a short, biography, and then we'll get right into it. So we have with us Natasha Latiff, who is a highly regarded international human rights lawyer known for her work in Afghanistan and beyond. As a Singaporean peacemaker, Natasha's peacebuilding journey began at 17 years old. She has established 2 acclaimed nonprofit organizations, including the Strategic Advocacy for Human Rights, or SAHR, which she is engaged with a lot, supporting justice and human rights for women and fighting gender-based sexual violence as well. Her remarkable work has led to transformative changes in law and policy on human rights and access to them. And then we have Ahmed Abdullahi, who is a Somali Canadian who serves as Interpeace's country representative in Somalia and liaison to the African Union. Born in Mogadishu, he brings over a decade of experience in peace building within the Horn of Africa. He, like many of us, is currently pursuing a master's degree in advanced studies of mediation in peace processes in Switzerland, actually, at ETH Zurich. Ahmed has led, designed, and implemented numerous initiatives and focused on peace, reconciliation, policy development, dialogue, and peace mediation processes. He has also worked on initiatives focused on political settlements and provided stabilization support to local governments, civil society, and communities that were previously under the control of Shabab. Please put your hands together for our speakers today. So I'd like to start off our conversation today with some stories for the youth in the audience. Natasha, starting with you, I'd love to know about your story. How did you start your journey in peacemaking, and what drew you in?
Thank you very much, Shruti, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you. Connected to this question is that my work also started as a student activist. So like you, I was seated in an event like this and thinking about what I can do, what I can create, how I can mobilize people. And so that began my journey into human rights as a student. When I was studying law at the University of Warwick, I just pulled a team of us together. We were, at the time, trying to assemble legal arguments for lawyers in Afghanistan to use when they're taking on cases in the court. So at the time, there were hundreds of rape victims who were wrongfully incarcerated for moral crimes and adultery. And so we took these cases and we decided, okay, let's figure out how can we convince a judge on the illegalities of that incarceration. And so mind you, at a young age, just like yourselves, just a group of us, we assembled legal arguments together, worked with a bunch of Afghan lawyers, also really young, and within 6 months of the pilot, we were able to release more than 19 women in prison, and it was the start of all of our efforts ahead. So my journey into this, to respond to your question, is as experimentation, working to think about how can identifying a problem with clarity, figuring out how to be operational, and then just taking the steps to doing it. And with that, we were able to build on that work on all other kinds of human rights issues and violations in Afghanistan and also beyond.
That's very, very inspiring, and I'm sure it's very inspiring to everyone in the crowd as well. To be able to do that at such a young age is incredible. So thank you so much for that. And Ahmed, same question for you. I want to know about your story. Where did you begin your journey as a peacemaker?
Thank you so much. For me, I think it's a bit different because as a child, and I want to just take you very quickly, I found myself fleeing a civil war along with my siblings, and then settling in Canada, and then as a teenager, we had the opportunity to come back at the age of 15 to Somalia, and seeing the carnage of civil war. And that was really an emotional moment, because you come from where there's unbelievable infrastructure like Canada, and then you come to a place of carnage and destruction where there was bullets everywhere. And so I spent about 4 years there. It was during, it was post-Civil War situation, and then after that, I go back to Canada, and then I come back as an adult in 2011 once again. So this is the second time coming back, and really it was during a famine. So this is where now, as a young adult, seeing what I can do. We had the opportunity to fundraise in Canada, to do something about the famine, and then that's when it really clicked on me that I need to be here more permanently and working to see what I can do. And so that's how kind of my journey, as many children today find themselves in conflict, and young people, fleeing your country to another country. And so it was that those challenges and life experiences in different phases that has led me to really pursue a career looking at ways we can make peace, and finding collaborative efforts with others, and returning as part of the diaspora community now, contributing to the state building process.
That's amazing as well, and I hope your journey has evolved since then, and you're feeling a little bit more at home in the Horn of Africa. Yeah. And actually, I wanted to ask you, how has your journey evolved since the beginning, since you came back and noticed like the famine that was happening and fundraised for that? Where has your journey taken off? Where did you see yourself being successful in being a peacemaker?
Initially, so the famine puts you in the humanitarian field, right? And so you want to respond to that. And then I realized that I didn't have the stomach for humanitarian work, and wanted to understand that the humanitarian crisis or the humanitarian situations are not really the root cause of the issue. So conflict is the root cause. So then that's when I needed to step back a bit, and pursue my education in peace and conflict studies in the UK. And so for a year I did that, and then I came back and mapped out really the organizations that were committed to peace building, and had the opportunity to work with them. And where now I'm with Interpeace, and Interpeace has been in Somalia for over 30 years, and so we're celebrating our anniversary. And so that rich history and organizations that are really committed to that, and having the ability to work in a country that now is recovering from civil war, and is in the state building process, and being part of the international community and regional neighboring countries.
Yeah, that's really, really inspirational. And Natasha, I wanted to ask you something similar. Since you started as this young group of just peers and colleagues working with young Afghanistan lawyers, how did you embark on one step of the journey to the next? And what was your motivation in continuing this work?
Well, at the time, this is the early 2000s. So maybe some of you may not have been born, but the US had invaded Afghanistan, and it was at a process of rebuilding its systems, its justice systems, its state structures, that had ultimately collapsed. We saw the opportunity. There were no laws in place. You go to court, situations were fluctuating. The judge would judge one case differently from the other. So we thought, okay, do we have an opportunity to rewrite the laws? And how do we get to that? So you got to understand. I come back to this because as students, it's not just about the theory of human rights, but if I wanted to fulfill it, what laws I need to rewrite, to put in place, and how do we operationally figure out how to get there? So actually the process of state building, civil society building, it's one of experimentation and trial. We focus on a problem. So if there are women who are in prison because they've been wrongfully incarcerated, how do you get someone out of prison? If the objective is to get someone out of prison, whether you work backwards, who do I need to speak to? Which laws can I use? Which laws are perhaps going to be an impediment? How can we mobilize the right persons? What's the possible backlash? It's a roadmap that you build for yourself to tackle a problem. So my journey as a human rights lawyer, it wasn't like I planned, this is what it's not that. I say, this is my problem.
Yeah.
Now how am I going to work with civil society, government, the international community? Where do I put the pressure? Where do I hold back? Who are the key actors? How do I convince them? And you work from problem backwards. So as students entering this journey, of course you've got to plan yourselves, but think about it from the perspective of problem, and then think about how you are positioned in the ecosystem and what you can do to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice, actually, even for us who are not into our careers yet, but even just during our academic journey with our thesis and our dissertation. We start with the problem,
Yeah.
and then we work on what could possibly be done to do this. How can we fix that? That's the methodology, and we continue to get all the way around it until we find the solution. And that is the base. That's the foundation of what we do in academia and in our career and in peacemaking and in a lawyer position as well. So I wanted to ask you both, what does your career look like today? How has that evolution, helped you to where you are today? Natasha, would you like to begin?
I'm so old to be thinking about this question, what my career looks like. Look, to be very honest, I don't see this like a career. I'm just very moved by solving a problem, So I ask myself, so I'm doing this to give you also some advice. I ask myself, what are my strengths? We all need ecosystems of support. We never do things alone. So what are my strengths? And how can I use my strengths as best as I can? So I found that I'm so invested in people. I'm so invested in particularly in civil society leaders, and I'm so invested in human rights lawyers and defenders. And I'm good at taking them, making them see their potential, working on their technical competence, and preparing them so that when they go before the Minister of Justice to change laws, so that when they go before a judge to convince the judge to take a decision on a case, so that when they go to the Vice President to mobilize his or her support, that they are absolutely prepared to do it. This is what I found my strength was. So with that, I mobilized my strength for that. Part of Sahar's work and the work of my other organization is to see the potential out there for the change, individuals, and work with them technically, help them develop their skills and leadership holistically, because you may have all the knowledge. You get your master, you get your bachelor degree, you may even do a PhD. But when you are before a minister, when you are before a judge, when you are before people that have been fighting in wars and don't see the same worldview as you, do you have the moral courage, the personal leadership to stand there and convince, stand there and put forward a point of view, stand there and also see their interests, see where their concerns are. You develop yourself holistically. So when you ask me about my next step in my career, I always think this is my next step in my journey. To find leaders, civil society leaders, political leaders out there who are making an incredible work, but just need that amount of technical and holistic support to help them see through their objectives. My work is in gender-based violence and human rights in both the domestic setting as well as international crimes. So I work with leaders in those spaces.
That's amazing and very, very inspirational. Thank you so much for your work, honestly. And Ahmed, where has your evolution led you today, and what are your biggest successes, perhaps? What are your strengths?
Just similar to, I think, Natasha, I never viewed this as a career. It was more of a calling, of circumstance that you find yourself. And again, because there's this, civil war creates so much problems and so much challenges that it requires a multi-dimensional approach in not resolving the conflict, but transforming the conflict. And this is where I think even the entire world struggles with. We're managing conflict, and we're trying to resolve and put bandages on different issues that require really a deep-rooted understanding and the courage to, as Natasha very eloquently mentioned, to be able to persuade people that might have trauma and mental health because of the conflict. And so I think you can pinpoint it's really peacemaking, peace building is about conviction and really truly a passion to work on the complex dynamics of human relations, and that's what it comes down to. And this human relationship that broke down, how do you put it back together? And this is really the focus of my work. And there are many challenges, but we are learning as we do, because I think that's the only way. This is not something you can theorize. What is in books is very, very important to have a framework understanding of it. But really, when the application of peace building and peacemaking comes, it's really about doing and being at the field and practicing that. And so, for me, it may not be an accomplishment. Is having that opportunity to come back to a country that I left and trying to contribute to the dynamics and peace and conflict and create an understanding around that, and how should the state respond to the conflict, and how we should advance on peace in a way that people, it resonates with them.
Yeah, I think coming back to this country that you had left in the first place, not a lot of people get the chance to do that, and so I think you've made a really, really good use of your personal touch within your field, and your journey has really, I'm sure, inspired so many of us here today. And then I have a few more questions just for you guys. What lessons have you guys learned throughout your various stages of your journeys? What do you think are maybe two of the biggest lessons that each of you have learned? Natasha?
Two is a very small number.
We can make it three.
You got to know who you're talking to. You got to know what their concerns are. You got to know how they view you. When we were working for many years, I think up till today, there's always this feeling that certain state actors have of human rights lawyers or leaders or defenders, that you work for the CIA, you're here to impose a Western idea, that you walk into a room and you're with a person that has such a distrust for you. So you're going to be walking into rooms and you're going to walk into a place of distrust. Important lesson is, if you are here with a sense of moral superiority, because we are more educated, you're more this and that, you're never going to get anywhere. So know who you're talking to. And then, of course, secondly is, when you walk into a room, a room is just a metaphor, but you are in a project or a stage or a platform or a meeting, that moment is not important for you to change a person's mind in that moment. So I tell my lawyers, we're not here to win the case today. It's not important that you come back to the office and say judgment was passed in our favor. And why I mention cases, because of course we've got to convince judges on human rights, and they view us with a lot of suspicion. I say we just have to show up. be more punctual than the next person, be more prepared than the next person, know your talking points so very well, don't waste the person's time, understand where they're coming from, and we go through these talking points. Because then, as Ahmed said, this is a long game. That one meeting is one of 100 of meetings you've got to attend. It's one of 100 of opportunities for you to make an impression. And at the point of making an impression, you don't want to create more distrust. So it's about showing up, learning and listening, and having the patience to say, I may not agree with you, or you may not agree with me, but today we just sit and we have a coffee. Sometimes that's why I tell my team members, just go for a coffee, go for a meeting. And then stay with the situation. I've been working on Afghanistan, but other several regions for the 20 odd years. I never give up on a situation. I never ever give up on a situation. I am there for the long term. So when you commit yourself to peace building work, there is a benefit in moving from conflict zone to conflict zone and so on. But if you really want to make a change, stay with the situation no matter what it is. Because there you will find, with that staying power, he mentioned people dynamics, human dynamics. It will be ingrained in you. You will be more effective when you know this. So that's really a big lesson that I've got to share with the younger ones today.
I actually would like to follow up with that. How do you stick with the situation if it feels hopeless? Like, what do you do to keep that motivation to stay with the situation?
Being hopeless is part of the work, so I don't take it personally. You know what they say, do your yoga, breathe good air, have good friends, marry the right person is very important. Do that for yourself, sure, but don't feel you need to achieve something, If you want to go into this work, you may run into a coup. People around you, team members, might be killed, might be threatened. You may see organizations sprout and die. This is the way. This is the context. So hopelessness you should feel it from time to time and be okay with it. Otherwise, this is not the space for you. Yeah.
Okay, that's really good advice. Thank you. And Ahmed, same question for you. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout your journey, and how do you stay motivated?
No, thank you. I think it might sound simple, but we're in a world where there is a lot of silos in terms of the way we work, and peace building is very clear that peace builders or peacemakers alone cannot build peace by themselves, and you need to connect the dots and look at the nexus between peace and humanitarian action, between peace and security. You need to look at between peace and the private sector, and make sure that you're looking at peace from a comprehensive lens. And that's what we realize. Really, this is one of the biggest lessons learned, that and peacemaking cannot be projectized. It's not a 3-year or 4-year or a 5-year project. It's not also a long-term investment. It's really a permanent situation or peacemaking where it's forever. That you will find yourself in, whether it's in the household, whether it's between societies, whether it's in at school, that you guys find yourself. And so I think, that's one of the biggest lessons, where we need to now think about peace in an innovative way. The old instruments or the infrastructures that were meant to manage peace, we're seeing it, as the ambassador mentioned, that it's not working. And so I think it's up to the new generation to look at new methods and methodology and ideas about peace, and create new infrastructures for peace. It would be the lesson, the advice, and that is the lessons that we see today. We're talking about the state collapsing in 1991 in Somalia, up to now we're building peace. And if you look at it from the lens, sometimes from outside, you think that things are not happening or working. But if you're someone that their reference point is 1995 when you were there, when there was no state, now there's a state that responds to certain things. It's still fragile. Security situation is still not great, but you see improvements, but it's very, very small. And this is where you need really a all hands on deck. And it's not about peace agreements or peace processes. And we need to involve the whole sector of society has to be involved in peace, and that's the lessons that we've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that both what you and the ambassador has said during this event has really rang true with us, that the youth and the young people that are trying to break into this industry are some of the people that are going to change the industry and change it in a way that's better and more efficient and more good for society. And another thing that you said at the end is that we need all of society to be involved in peace processes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people kind of forget that it's not just political scientists, it's not just people who studied international relations or development. It is people it is farmers, it is physicians, it is everyone who needs to kind of come together and make sure that a state that is built out of a civil war context or any other conflict needs to kind of stand for longer than the Civil War lasted, at least. Right?
Yes, maybe another lesson is that the forces that advance conflict are extremely organized, and they are still extremely well put together. And I think that the forces for peace have to match the same level of energy and come with the same creativity in terms of advancing peace, because they're very creative in advancing conflict. And so if you don't match the energy, it's similar to sports. There's competition. You have forces of conflict and forces of peace, where you need to match the energy. And sometimes I think also, as the ambassador mentioned, those forces for conflict are not going to play by the same rules. And so then what does those forces for peace have to respond to that? If they respond in similar, they fall into their hole. So I think it's very, very important that, and this is where the future I think lies, is for the young people really. I mean, there's a great disappointment in the instruments that were meant to manage and resolve conflict are not working today. And it's for the young people now everywhere here in Switzerland to think innovatively, to look at, to challenge the status quo of also international relations. Is this how things are supposed to be? And I think you're seeing, for instance, Somalia. I mean, the population 75% above, according to UNDP, are below the ages of 35. Our young people are on social media. So there's great hope in terms of they're seeing that the current status quo is not working, the current way of state building is not working. And so it's very important for young people to develop new theories and new ideas and test them out. And young people in conflict zones to test those things out. And so I think these are the lessons and thinking that we need to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that some of the young people in this room today will be some of those voices in the future.
Shruti, can I add one point?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Also, when we talk about peace building, have an expansive view of what peace means. Because a woman's perspective of peace can be different from a man. And a person from an underrepresented ethnic and religious minority will also have a different perspective on peace.
Yeah.
Actually, if you ask most women in this world, the home is the most dangerous place for them. The home. So when you think about peace building, think about it, there are multiple dimensions to it. There's a state-to-state processes, there are regional processes, but there are also community processes. And that's where you got to take into account what a person from the community define as peace, not from textbooks in particular, but from the people. What do they define as human security and as peace? And so you may not be involved in state-to-state negotiation between non-state actors and state actors, but peace has to be struck everywhere, in every aspect, whether you are changing the laws or policies, whether you're fighting a case in the courts, whether you're documenting cases for fact-finding and for accountability and justice. In these spaces, you've got to think about what peace means for the communities that you are talking about or the communities that you're representing.
Thank you so much, and that is a very, very important point that you brought up, so thank you for interrupting me. At this point, I would like to open it up for the Q&A session. I'll take about 2 to 3 questions, and then I'll give you guys the floor. Do we have any questions? Okay, I think I saw one hand over there. We have you?
Should I stand up?
Yes, please stand.
One of you spoke about how Somalia was in the civil war in the 1990s and it took a long time, but eventually there was a system and there was a state. I was wondering like how much of your work is constrained by the fact that you need results as soon as possible, but there are long-term commitments and sometimes it takes a lot of time to get results.
And then I'll take one more question. Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for talking to us today. Something that you mentioned earlier about even when the situation is difficult, you just sort of hold on to it. And even the ambassador mentioned that in the conflict sector in general, there's very little investment that goes towards peace building as such. Right? So in an environment where it's conflict that's more often commercialized, I'm assuming there are some compromises that you might have to make when you're trying to negotiate for peace, solutions for peace. So how do you then navigate those compromises and sort of prevent, basically be at peace with yourself?
Thank you so much. Would you guys like to get started on answering the questions?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Yes, the balance between results and long-term engagement. So definitely, that is something that needs to be struck, and sometimes it's not, because you have sometimes a political culture, elite political culture situation where they worsen the situation and they create conflict among communities, and so so it's a situation where the peace process or the peace agreements will bring people together, and sometimes their representatives are not elected. They come. The person that makes the biggest noise becomes the leader. He or she may not be qualified for those situations in terms of rebuilding a society that has for a long time been in conflict. And so results, with the support of international community, sometimes there's this, with the support, there's that accountability factor in terms of being part of the international community and being part of the multilateral institutions. And so I think that's where a lot of the push comes from. And internally, you have very aware young people that take onto social media, and freedom of expression is very, very important for the Somali young people, where it might go into a different place, but I think where we're seeing slowly but surely reforms taking hold, economic reforms, political reforms, justice reforms, agreeing on kind of fiscal, how do we share budgets and resource, because the center of the conflict is resource, so how do you distribute that, in an equitable way, and how do you share it? So it sounds basic, but it's very difficult because certain people or elites want everything for themselves. There's high level of corruption and mismanagement of resources, and that creates further conflict. So there is results. There have been results that has been seen throughout the years. So Somalia is not the same the way it was 10 years ago. So although it looks very slow, but surely that progress is there. So results definitely. This is what young people are looking for, but then a long-term engagement and understanding of the context that becomes very important.
Absolutely. And would you like to also add anything to that?
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's where I wanted to jump in just to support Ahmed in saying that often the conflict parties are better organized than the peace. Because at the core of many conflicts there are economic interests, right?
Yeah.
So there's this conflict driver that sort of where parties want to gain, and that by doing that they are withholding the whole peace dividend, the enormous potential that lies in peace economically for the people, let's say, right? So that is a paradox and important to understand in many conflicts, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And also sometimes the parties that are driving peace are actually part of the problem. so they could be part of the forces that are promoting war, violence, and conflict. So one has to be very discerning on who's on the table and what their interests are, though they postulate themselves as peace negotiators.
That's very true. That's very true. Can we have another few questions? Yes.
Yes, I work for Peace Women across the globe. The question for Natasha. In the beginning, when you explained the beginning of your career or your journey, you said that you started working with Afghan colleagues. Okay, Singapore and Afghanistan are not very close by. And my question here, because I work in networks, how did you actually get to those colleagues? How do you maintain those networks? I imagine that you work as teams, and how do you see each other? How do you work together? How did you choose those colleagues and not others, and this context and not another context? And do you have women and men in your team? How do you balance? You talked about the different approaches to peace with women. So,
Sure.
Thank you. I'll take one more question. Yes.
For both of you, you mentioned the fact that we should see peacemaking as a kind of competition, that we're also an actor that are competing with conflicted parties in conflict. And you mentioned the fact that peacemakers should be able to really understand the mental aptitude of formation from the other. These last 2 years I've been to several panels, and peacemakers often are diplomats that don't really have strategy, education, or military conflict based knowledge. Do you think this is something that we should know, that in our education system that aims to make and produce peacemakers, we should have more about this, about military theory, strategy, whatever?
Very good questions. Natasha, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, sure. Thank you all very much. I will talk about my past work in Afghanistan without reference to the situation now. I traveled to Afghanistan when I was quite young. So when I went there, I had studied Islamic law and international human rights law. So the lawyers there, when they went to court and when they were changing laws and policies, they really needed to convince these key actors, judges, the Minister of Justice, the law reform committees. So I worked with them through these issues. We went issue by issue and figured out how to resolve them step by step. Eventually I set up organizations, and through that we hired women, and so the work is very much with women lawyers on the ground. When they are preparing themselves to go for meetings, when they're preparing themselves to go to court, we are there to prepare them so that when they are at that meeting, they are respected, they're seen as persons of authority, that they're invited back again, and that from the back seat they're invited to the front seat. That's my job. I make sure that those who are in the spaces of influence, both law and policy, that they will come out of that meeting with a higher position and status than when they entered it. So we work with groups on the ground. Yeah. This gentleman's question.
Yes, no, definitely. I think maybe that is a question for the ambassador to reflect on. But no, this challenge has come up where peace has been highly politicized, and it takes away because you find diplomats who they are there to advance the policies of their state, and if their state is not deeply committed to peace mediation, we know Norway and Finland and other actors, but still is a very small pool of actors who are really deeply committed, and we have situations where policies where you can't talk to a terrorist, and then if you can't talk to the terrorist, how then do you want to make peace or find a dialogue or overcome the situation? So it's really a very difficult situation. Currently, Somalia is dealing with that. There is a terrorist organization. The communities and many of the people who are the peace activists do want a dialogue with Al-Shabaab to transform the conflict, and to reach these young people who have been disfranchised and feel that they've been left out of the state building process. And so there's many reasons why they join, similar to joining gangs, this feeling of disenfranchisement. And so I think this is where I throw it back to you guys, where there has to be a challenge of policies and status quo and law as well, because law is made by human beings. We have to review if this law is really relevant and serves the need of societies or the international community. And so I think that is where the challenge lies, and maybe the ambassador can add to that, since he's the diplomat in the room.
Now, if I understand your question correctly, it is whether the skill set that is required from peace and conflict practitioners is the right one. I think the broad answer is that we need all kinds of different competencies in the peace and conflict space. You need military people, you need people that are experts on DDR and on transitional justice. You need all kinds of competencies into that mix. And the role of a good facilitator is often to bring at different stages in the process these different competencies into the table in a good way. So the good news for you as students, I think that there's many sort of specialties within this big area of expertise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the diplomats is only a small part of this, and that's why, I mean, as a peace actor, we often cooperate and partner with others, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly. Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you so much, Natasha and Ahmed. Before we continue on to the apéro, which we will be providing free wine and free snacks, I do want to start by thanking, the long list of people that I need to thank. First of all, thank you so much to the FAB for accommodating this many people within this beautiful space. So thank you so much, Tamara, for helping us make this happen. And without John and your Philanthropic Alliance and Dorothy, thank you guys so much for providing us with the support that PBI needs to start making a difference within the Graduate Institute community, and also Geneva-wide, and also worldwide sometimes as well. So thank you guys so much, and a huge shout out as well to the CCDP for just being here and to support us, and to support many initiatives within the Graduate Institute community in all of our endeavors. And thank you guys all so much. I would like to pass off the baton to John for a moment. I believe he has a few things to say.
I just wanted to say one thing, and that really great to have you guys here. But I also wanted to tell everyone that we're very honored today to have Victoria, who is here. Victoria, if I can describe it correctly, was an ex-FAR commander in Colombia, and with the help of Norway, working over many years, was successful in creating a peace process, and the peace agreement was signed in 2016. And Victoria has been spending, the last, 8 years, as a voice for peace and supporting women participation in peace, including helping ex-combatants who had spent Victoria spent 24 years of her life as a combatant, to try to integrate back into society. So please, meet her, and we got young peacemakers, but we got
Youngish.
we got a bit younger. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
And I want to invite all of you guys to, follow us on social media and, catch up with our events that are coming up next week. We do have our Youth and Peacebuilding Conference that will be starting on September 25th and ending on September 27th. And the Peacebuilding Initiative will play a pretty big role within the Geneva Peace Week in the middle of October. So stay tuned, follow us on social media, and we hope to see you guys soon. Please enjoy the free wine, and thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you so much.
No, this was fun. Very
Very influential. Well done, moderator. Putting this together. Yes, we have to take a picture with the Peacebuilding Initiative. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's very